ambulance dispatch.
Yeah, I need an ambulance to 8723 Fox Hills Road. My wife's been shot. She's not breathing.
A female at an address out on Fox Hills Road wasn't breathing and needed first responders. I looked and I saw a guy on the porch, and it took me a second, but it just clicked that that was someone that was an intern with our sheriff's office, Seth Teckel. And I see him doubled over, looks like he's sobbing.
21-year-old Seth Teckel tells Deputy Wonderland that his wife, Lisa Teckel, has been shot.
Lisa's a reserve deputy with our office, and it was, very surreal. I go into the trailer, just straight inside of a bedroom, and I could see a paramedic in there. He's working on Lisa, so I asked the paramedic, should I start CPR again? But he said just very slowly, and no, that she's dead.
23-year-old Lisa Teckel is pronounced dead from a gunshot wound to the left side of her upper body.
Lisa was pregnant at the time, and I remember telling one of the paramedics, maybe there is something they can do. Maybe the baby's not dead. I was grasping at straws at that moment.
At only 17 weeks, Lisa and Seth's unborn daughter is lost.
I don't know what to say to Seth. I don't know how to console him. I mean, what do you say or can you say when, your wife who's pregnant with your child's murdered?
Within minutes, Deputy Wonderland's fellow officers show up at the scene. As a reserve deputy officer, Lisa was one of their own.
Lisa was my best friend. If somebody was to say, how can I hurt you worse than anything in the whole world? I would have said, take Lisa from me, would. She was everything. She was my world.
We're a small department. We know each other's husbands, each other's kids. Here's a violent act that occurred, resulting in the death of Lisa and her baby. Who's our suspect now? Who did this?
I went out and talked to Seth, so I started asking him, what happened?
I was in the truck, getting ready for work, and I heard a gun go off. I came running out. I looked in the bedroom and just laying there. I'm gonna kill whoever the did this. Yeah.
Actually, I can remember when Lisa came home and was kind of talking about a boy, Seth, whose dad owned a bowling alley at the time. That kind of evolved into them dating and, eventually him asking me if he could marry her. For a couple months prior to this, Seth has been talking about this neighbor, Brian Tate, who's just weird and maybe somebody to be cautious of.
Just a couple weeks prior, there was this argument on things being tossed over the fence back and forth between Seth Teckel and Brian Tate. I remember Todd saying he thought that, Brian may be responsible.
Do you have any guns that are missing in your house?
I haven't looked.
You haven't looked?
I know.
There's people there now. If that's the case, what's given a list of how many?
Seth makes a list of 5 guns in the house, 2 pistols, and 3 rifles that are accounted for in the home.
Let's go with your theory here that it was Shooter. Who was the first person that came to your mind?
Tate, my crazy ass neighbor.
How come you thought of him first?
Just because of the thing that he's been saying and been doing to us. I mean, okay.
When I spoke to Seth about Tate, he would describe Tate as somebody that was mentally unstable, that carried around a loaded firearm and would stay up all night and was hallucinating about people terrorizing him.
I honestly think the guy's freaking crazy. Honestly, off his rocker crazy.
While Seth gives his statement, investigators in the field talk to Brian Tate.
Did you hear anything in the middle of the night last night?
I was in bed, and normally I would have been up doing guard duty with all this that happened, but I went to bed about 8:30 and didn't get up till 11. I'm trying to get plenty of sleep.
His mom verified his story, said that she was up at 5. Brian was in bed. She never saw Brian come out of the house or come back to the house.
Brian Tate has an alibi, but his history of bad blood with the Teckles still makes him a viable suspect.
When we started to unravel everything, things started to change drastically.
Colton Miller was a friend of Seth Teckle. He had provided information to law enforcement concerning Seth's interest in a young woman by the name of Rachel McFarland, who he worked with.
Nothing had sexual's ever happened. I've never had sex with her. I gave her hugs, and I kissed her.
When we pushed a bit more, it went from I just hugged her to I kissed her. His story started to somewhat unravel.
Well, there's obviously more to this Rachel thing. She was under the impression that I was leaving Lisa. She just asked if I was, if I was going to go through with it. And I said, yeah. I mean, I shouldn't have lied, obviously, but...
When we started to unravel everything about his lies involving Rachel, he was a bit defensive.
Why would Rachel have the impression that you were going to leave Lisa?
Because I gave her that impression.
That's a problem.
I know it is, and I told you that earlier.
At that point, Seth decided that he didn't want to talk to me anymore and left.
Seth Teckle is free to go, but unable to return home until the sheriff's office concludes its search of his property. One of the people investigators had interviewed was a former roommate of Lisa and Seth's, named Lucas Howell.
We had learned that Lucas had a gun that was at the residence, a Mossberg 500 shotgun.
The shotgun was not on Seth's list of guns at the house.
And the crime scene people said we never located a Mossberg 500 in the residence. That was concerning to us because there's supposed to be this gun here and we don't know where it's at. We'd made the decision that the next day we'd search the Teckle property, see if we can locate it.
The plan was to search the exterior better than we were able to do the day before. The shotgun was ultimately discovered in some tall grass north of the property.
In our mind, it's certainly theoretically possible that it was the gun that was used to kill Lisa Teckle.
One of our reserve deputies had the idea that when we release the scene, we should put a camera pointing where the gun was, see what happens.
He made almost a direct beeline to that location.
Investigators believe that Seth is searching for the Mossberg 500 shotgun.
He wasn't just a witness anymore. He became a suspect at that point.
Investigators get results from Lisa's autopsy. The report confirms that she was killed with a shotgun. Fragments of the projectile are collected for testing.
According to Rachel, at the time of Lisa's death, it had not become sexual. She had drawn the line. He would have to leave Lisa Teckle before she would allow it to go any further.
Rachel also mentions that she started to date someone else, and Seth found out about the other man 2 weeks ago.
One of the glaring things that really struck us was that Seth told Rachel to just give him 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, she's dead. That was pretty powerful evidence.
To help secure the case against Seth, the DA's office asks investigators to rule out the only other person of interest.
We needed another interview with Mr. Tate to look at his guns, look at his ammunition, which he allowed us to do. And none of that stuff was similar to the shotgun behind the residence. So when we left there, we were convinced he had nothing to do with what happened.
The deputies, they just come in there and got Seth. I'd found out later that they used my daughter's handcuffs to arrest him.
The first day of the trial, the opening statement lays out the evidence in the case. We have to prove premeditation, specific intent to kill.
Among the most incriminating evidence is the shotgun that Seth omitted from his list. Ballistics testing reveals that the round that killed Lisa likely came from the same gun.
The gun was pretty critical to our case and, in our mind, pointed directly at Seth Tekel.
We also presented evidence about the secret phone that Seth had.
There was a cell phone that was found in his vehicle that nobody knew about. And we discovered that there was some text messages Seth had sent to Rachel the night before the shooting, stating that we were done and Lisa's leaving in the morning. It was a countdown to Lisa's death.
We knew that the defense was going to hone in on this argument that Mr. Brian Tate was responsible. Unfortunately, Mr. Tate passed before the trial could start.
I believe he died in September. He had some very significant health issues. The defense's tact was to sort of portray him as this mentally unstable person that didn't like Seth Tekel.
Basically, the argument was that Brian Tate broke into their house with the intent to kill Lisa without carrying a gun, hoping that he would find a loaded gun, then shoot her, and then be able to run away from Seth without being seen.
The jury found Seth Tekel guilty of murder in the first degree and guilty of non-consensual termination of a human pregnancy.
He was going to be held accountable for murdering my daughter.